Hey, what's up, everybody? Ricky Carruth here. I hope you're doing super well. So, I've got some breaking news in the industry last week. We had something drop that I want to discuss. I want to talk about what the ramifications could be on the industry because, it seems like we're sliding a certain direction and who knows exactly where that is exactly. And as I said, it could have massive ramifications on the industry. So I want to dive into this. And first I want to bring on my co-host for today and also have two special guests that you're going to want to hear from here later in the show. But first, Eric Zollinger. What's up, dude?
Hey, how are you, Ricky?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. Good to see you. You up in New York
Likewise.
today?
Yeah. Hey, we're ready to go. It's a great day for real estate, as I like to say.
Oh yeah, dude. What I see the sunlight there on Times Square behind you. What's the temperature up there today?
Let's see. It is about, I think, 60.
60.
It's still a little cold. Yeah.
That's cold up there?
Yeah.
Cool, man. No, I wanted to bring you in and bring our guests in today to talk about this because, like I said, this could be huge because it just feels like we're taking baby steps here towards something, right? Towards something, and nobody really understands what that something is. And I feel like we need to continue to talk about this and have this conversation so that as things progress, our audience is on the front end of understanding what's happening before it actually gets here instead of just not talking about it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden one day here we are and nobody knows how we got here.
That's why I texted you first thing Tuesday morning. I'm like, did you see this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Let me get into it here. Hobby Hanna, CEO of Howard Hanna, he basically sent a letter Wednesday. This is last Wednesday. So about a week ago to NAR, National Association of Realtors, and more than 70 MLSs his brokerage belongs to. And what he did in this letter was he informed them that it will no longer consider itself bound by the policy. And what he's talking about is a clear cooperation policy. The policy that basically, it's a rule created by NAR that's implemented by the local MLSs that says, hey, if you have a listing, if an agent has a listing, and it's advertised more than a day, then you've got to put that in MLS and syndicate it out to Zillow and all the other Redfin and everywhere else. He basically said, hey, we don't feel like that this applies to us. We're no longer consider ourselves bound by this organization's clear cooperation policy. And what's really interesting is that about, I don't know, it was about a month or two ago, I saw that he actually mentioned that he was thinking about leaving MLS altogether. And so the more I think about what's happening overall in the industry, and you think about what's happening with Compass and what they're saying and what Hobby here is the direction it looks like he's going in, because he has his big private listing portal, etc. There's no rule that says any of these brokerages can't just leave MLS altogether and just be their own private portal, basically, as long as they're
what's interesting is Tuesday morning I was on LinkedIn and I saw that Revkin actually posted that story that you're referencing there, and he's basically, thank you, Howard Hanna, the 7th largest brokerage in the United States per Real Trends, for standing up for homeowner choice, which I still don't see how that's the homeowner choice. On Friday, the company informed the policy was adopted in response and the fear that brokers were pursuing novel marketing strategies and taking advantages of new technologies. Stamping down on that innovation harms brokerages and it harms their customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what they're talking about with seller choice is they're basically advocating that sellers should have the choice whether their property goes on MLS, whether their property goes on Zillow or Redfin and all these other.
But haven't they always had that choice if they want to be fully public or if they want to be off the market?
Mm-hmm. That's what's interesting. There's the conversation right there, right? So walk me through that. So just so people watching understand, how did they already have the choice?
Well, I mean, full transparency, I'm part of the real estate board of New York. So I'm not a realtor because we're not realtors in Manhattan. But part of the real estate board of New York, we still have, a cooperation that we co-broke within 24 hours. But if somebody doesn't want to be on, then, if they don't want to be out there in public, they don't have to be. They can be private, and it's basically, you can send it to other brokers in the system. It's just not publicly out there, publicly co-broke online.
They just check a box on the listing agreement, or
Correct.
like
Yes.
sign a disclosure or
Well,
whatever.
it's like a separate disclosure. It's a separate part of it. But from what I understand with Compass, that's not the same thing as being, privately listed, because it's still on their public website.
Yeah. No, I saw it and I thought, okay, this is interesting because of the fact that nothing stops any of these companies from just leaving MLS and saying, we're just on our own. We have our own listings. We're our own portal, basically. And what Hobby actually said like a month ago was that even in that scenario, Zillow could still come to us and we could still put properties that we want, that the sellers want on Zillow, syndicated through our platform. That's when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, right? Like he's already masterminding how this thing plays out if in fact he leaves MLS. Another thing he said in the article, that he got interviewed by Inman after he sent the letters out, was the fact that MLSs have been fining his agents for not putting their properties in MLS and stuff like that. And he's like, we're not paying them. He said, we're going to have the local brokers of Howard Hanna decide how they want to handle those fees. But like we don't care if they pay them or not. We feel like they're, fraudulent fees based on this, policy that we don't agree with. But he was like, if we don't pay the fees and they kick us out of MLS, then that's going to hurt them because obviously they want listings. So he's just like, he's manhandling the
which is fascinating, because in New York, they require us, Street Easy, which is owned by Zillow, they require us to input our listings separately. It just is, there's no longer a feed. We have to do it independently and pay them separately.
Got it. So I want to get somebody else's take on this, guys. We have Jason Harber. He is the co-founder of American Real Estate Association. He's also a broker with Compass.
That's right. Many hats.
What's happening, bro?
How we doing, guys?
Good, man. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're part of Compass. You're American Real Estate Association, who you and Mauricio kind of created to, I wouldn't necessarily say it's competition in NAR, but it has some of the same functionalities as NAR. So, what's your position on this entire thing?
So we came out with our own proposal. We called it Clear Collaboration. We think, first of all, just looking at this in 30,000 foot, we're at a very disruptive moment in our industry. And I think disruption in this industry is a good thing, because for far too long, the status quo and legacy systems have led us to the place we're at now. And what does that place look like? We are ranked lower than the used car salesperson in terms of consumer approval. People think very poorly of our industry, and yet we're responsible for the most important transaction of people's lives. If I wanted to sell you one share of Apple right now, I'd have to get a Series 7. I'd have to get a background check. I'd have to get multiple exams done before I could sell you a single security. However, if I want to sell you a home, you give me 30, 45 days, maybe 60 days, depending on what state I'm in, and we are in business, partner. I think there's something wrong. There's a severe disconnect between the importance of the work that the real estate community does and the value and the understanding in the public of what it is that we do. And frankly, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I believe that a lot of that responsibility for this misperception goes to the trade association that is governed over our industry, and in some ways I think have led us astray. It's one of the reasons why Mauricio and I founded the American Real Estate Association, to provide a second voice, to put ideas out there into the public square that are different from the status quo. And look, I get it. NAR is the biggest trade association in America. They have biggest political contributor in America in terms of pack sizes. And so they're a very powerful organization. And by the way, they do a lot of good work too, particularly in federal legislation. But something's wrong in our industry. I think we're lacking innovation. By the way, I get screenshots from people who work in different MLSs in different markets around the country, and they send me screenshots of what their MLS database looks like. I mean, man, you're looking at 1998 technology all over again. Why is it? And not to all of them, but why is it that so many of them are dated? Like I'm licensed also in the state of Florida where I am today. I was just out with a client. I wouldn't send that client a screen, anything from my MLS because I don't like how it looks because it's 30-year-old technology. There's a lack of innovation in our industry. So let me just start there.
Yeah.
And I think so. Now going forward to our conversation here about clear cooperation, how does this tie in? Status quo, legacy systems, what's best for the consumer? Too often we think about these things the wrong way. We think about like, okay, well, how's this going to impact the trade group? How's this going to impact the brokerage? How's this going to impact the agent? All wrong, completely inverted. What matters is the consumer, hard stop. And so what we put forth was this idea of what we called clear collaboration, which was mandatory submission to MLSs, but not mandatory marketing. Now, you know, Zillow, and I have lots of friends there and I respect them all. They're not our regulator. They're an aggregator. They are not our regulator. When I'm in New York State, my regulator is Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, my real estate business in New York. It is not Zillow. It is not StreetEasy. But for some reason in our industry, we have aggregators, we have a trade association that are almost playing the role of quasi-governmental. There is no other industry, none, where this exists. Medical, legal, go through the line. It doesn't exist. And it frustrates me that we find ourselves in this position. And I hate to see it because it puts us at a disadvantage because the aggregators, they have shareholders to answer to. They're publicly traded corporations, and they have fiduciaries not to you and I and the folks watching this. The fiduciaries to shareholders, which is very different.
That's why it feels like we're walking backwards, not walking forwards, right? Because it's not serving the general good, the general consumer, our buyers and sellers.
That's right. Well, we may be walking sideways, sometimes forward, sometimes backwards. But
what would you think Zillow would be? What action could Zillow take that would be pro-consumer?
Look, I think to allow the consumer to have choice, I think it's pro-consumer. If I don't want to be on a certain website, like, shouldn't I have the ability to not be on that website? I think so. I think it should be easy to do so too. So I think being pro-consumer is respecting the consumer and not saying we know better than you. Now I get it. And I understand the logic of you put listings everywhere, more people see it. I understand the thought process, but I also know, because I do this, because I'm not just the head of a trade group. I'm also a broker. I'm out there on the street every day with our fellow agents. Every client is a different situation. And just when you think you've seen it all, you see something new. And there are different situations out there, and not everyone wants to be on a public website. And I just think we should respect the consumer and stop telling them that we know what's best for them.
Do you think that, let me ask you this. Do you feel like the way this is going, that people that are pro the private listing side are in a way, like, is it harmful to mainstream the idea that it's best to have less buyers see the property? Because, like, I totally understand it on like a celebrity, those kind of situations, right? Which has always kind of been the case. But now it seems like there's this push towards, this is what everyday Americans should do. They should test it off market with a really small group of buyers, and go through this process. It seems like it's being more mainstreamed now. And then the data shows it's like, like Compass is saying, like, 40 or 50% or whatever of their sellers, want to go that route. And it just seems like they want to go that route because that's what the agent is at the presentation basically pushing. And it seems like they're pushing something that's really only the best really for people that are in those situations where privacy really is important to regular everyday consumers. And from what I understand, Compass actually came out with a new disclosure. Didn't they come out with a new disclosure like yesterday or something like that? A new disclosure basically pointing out that the listings not distributed via MLS may receive less exposure, fewer offers, and lower sales price.
I think they're required to to disclose that. I think there was language.
Why
about
would they be
that.
required to disclose that?
But because the idea is, though, and I can tell you this firsthand. What's the number one determining factor if you're going to have to lower the price on the listing?
The number one determining factor is that your price too high and you're not getting the activity you need.
Your days on market, right? Your days on market going on and on, you're not getting showings.
Not necessarily. I think it would be more so that you're not getting the activity you need.
But like the more days on market, the less likely you are. Like there's a direct relationship. The more you're on the market, the less likely you are to get your asking price, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, when you have something that might be tougher to comp, this is where the clock doesn't run and you get real-time feedback. I just had this on a listing on the Upper East Side where we put it on in the private exclusive Encompass. And I got feedback and I was like, your price is too high, man.
But here's my question. It's not private at all because it's out there on the public website that anybody can just go to.
Right, but there's no days on market. There's no days on market click to it.
But it's not, there's nothing private about it. The only thing private is that it's not collecting days on market.
Well, no, but you're asking me like, what's the advantage of the system? So I'm saying,
yeah.
Like no DOM really helps. And then I got to market at the right price, and I wouldn't have done that had I not had that prior knowledge.
Right. I guess the counter argument is that it's not a true test, and that who knows if that really was the price too high, because it really wasn't a true test because it was only exposed to a small group of buyers. Whereas on the open market, the original price might have been a great price. Now we went at a lower price because we didn't think it was the right price because we tested it with a small group of buyers. And now we got lower than we could have if we went out with the original price to the open market to begin with. I guess that's the counter argument, is that how do you really know if it's not a true test because it's not really getting tested against the entire market?
Like you're getting feedback is qualitative and quantitative.
You are, and it's worth something. It's worth something. I'm just stating the counter argument. You know,
what's interesting is when you have like say 3 buyers all say, "Oh, the apartment's dark," and like when I was in the apartment, I was like, "I didn't think it was dark." And you're like, "Oh, maybe it is a dark apartment." Like you get feedback, qualitative, quantitative, from buyers that you don't get on paper when you're comping, and it really helps. It's really insightful.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you believe that this is kind of like a downslide towards just like a world in say 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, where we kind of are just kind of a bunch of different portals with no real connecting?
No, I think the opposite actually. So I think where we go where we're successful is actually with a unified national listing service where you have access to listings in the state where you're licensed. I know people who are members of 5 and 6 MLSs, which I think is insane. Like I'm from Long Island. I'm licensed in New York State. The state of New York gives me my license, but guess what? Because I'm not a member of the board on Nassau County, I can't sell where I grew up, even though I guarantee you I know every block better than the realtor selling out there. Why? Why are we putting up these walls that are restraints of trade in our own industry? It's because of the way we're set up. I'd like to see those restraints come down.
Now, I 100% agree there because, like, when you're licensed in an entire state. But yet, like, I don't have access to, like, my MLS in Birmingham. So I don't know what's for sale there. I can't list.
Why has no one talked about this before? I started on this about a year ago, and I'm banging my head against the table. And I'm like, why are we allowing these restraints of trade in our own industry? And by the way, it's not the government that's restraining our trade. They don't give you a license in Montgomery. They don't give you a license per county, right? They give you a license for the state.
Right.
So if you can sell, if the state says you can sell in the state, my goodness, sell in the state where you're licensed.
So you think it'll go more towards state by state versus county by county in the future?
I'd like to see that. I think particularly now folks are more transient, like even post COVID. And I think that the way people live is different than it was before. And I would like to see, I'm hopeful that that's where we're going.
Yeah. But that would basically eliminate the current MLS system.
I think it'll morph. It would change. What do we have? 800 MLSs. I think they'll morph into something that would be better for the consumer and better for the industry. And by the way, like I don't want to sell in a market where I have no local knowledge. There's still the referral system, which I think is terrific. But at the same token, I don't like the restraints of trade that are put on me as an agent, and I think it's high time we change that.
then the state MLSs, if that were to come true, then it would be, in your world, would be set up where you could basically post private listings on that actual MLS that doesn't collect days on the market.
That's right.
Stats. It's still in the MLS. All the brokers see it. It's not syndicated to whoever the players are at the time. It's just basically in MLS, kind of as a private listing within the real estate agent community, or even, I guess, public facing as well at that point.
Yeah, you
right?
can, but mandatory submission would allow you to submit not just to your local MLS. It would go across the state, which is just
Yeah. So you don't see like Compass having their own portal with their own listings, EXP having their own portal, Anywhere having their own portal, Remax having their own portal, and listings kind of being in different places like they are in other countries.
I mean, they might have their own portals, but I think the question is, where does the data go and when does it go there?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're in a world where, the current MLS kind of goes away and now we get to like, okay, there isn't a rule here. You guys can just keep it in your own portal. You can advertise it publicly. There's no clear cooperation. You can kind of advertise it for 20 days, 100 days, whatever you want to do. It seems like that would really hurt the mom and pop brokerages.
Yeah, it would. But that's why we call it collaboration, where you're required to collaborate amongst your fellow licensees.
Mm.
And I don't think we should be putting up these kinds of silos artificially. I think we should collaborate. I think the question is when, like when does it become bad for the consumer after how long is private? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 days? These are the conversations we have to have. And by the way, it may change market to market in terms of what's better for the local customs in each market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. It sounds like you're kind of like happy medium.
I'm trying to be rational about our thinking. We meet with agents all over the country, and I hear, to be blunt, MLS horror stories about inefficiencies that are out there. And then I also understand the need to share and collaborate with our colleagues, and we don't want to cut off colleagues disadvantage colleagues because they're with firm X or firm Y, right? That doesn't seem fair. But I think there's a balance to be struck here that can actually work very well for everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got some more guests coming on that are really the pro private listing side of this thing in the future. So I'm interested to just continue this conversation, for the betterment of the industry, to keep everybody up to date on what's happening as it's happening, as these new ideas emerge and different letters are getting sent and different ideas are popping up, so that we can kind of evolve with it, because whatever it's going to be is what it's going to be. We don't really have like us as the little guys, little agents, really don't have a whole lot of choice of whatever we're going to get thrown at us, kind of like the whole Sitzer Burnett thing. Like, we had zero opinion or choice or anything on how that whole thing went down or what was going to happen or what now we have to do. But I can say that we're always the most resilient group of professionals that I've ever seen, and always step up to the challenge.
Well, you preach that a lot too, and you always tell agents, because I watch everything you say. You tell them, stay focused, like don't get distracted by the noise, right? Like, do your job. And I think more than ever, that's so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Eric, give us some more of your thoughts.
Well, I find it interesting. I was just reading on The Real Deal this afternoon where Thad Wong, who is the head of App Properties, just bought by Compass. And there's a big disagreement between Baird and Warner, which is a smaller company in Chicago, which I actually was licensed there for about 2 years, where there's that whole kind of misunderstanding now. The smaller firms want the full collaboration with everyone, and yet Thad Wong was saying, well, it might not be bad for the big companies, right? It's who is it serving? The bigger companies going off on their own, it's all about market share, and you'll see the end of the smaller firms, the mom and pops, the Baird and Warners, if everybody just leaves the clear cooperation rule.
Yeah, I see that it could go both ways there. Like, if there's mandatory submission where everyone has access to those listings, and that there's cooperation on the back end, that the bigger companies will work with the smaller companies, and the small. See, that's the whole reason why the smaller companies would go away, is because if there's silos of different portals and these big companies are holding all the listings, and the little company, a buyer comes to the little mom and pop company and says, "Hey, I want to buy a house." I'm like, well, like I don't really have much, and Remax has all the listings, and EXP has all the listings, and Compass has all the listings. The buyer pretty much has to go to that brokerage.
Right.
Same thing with the agents. The agents of that little company will have to go to a bigger company to have access to more inventory for their clients and more access to buyers, etc. So that's why it would be the end of small brokerages, and that's something that I want to protect, because I want a world where in 10 years, if someone wants to open their own brokerage, they can do so.
Absolutely.
That's the part of this whole thing that that I want to be real careful about, and kind of, that's one thing I want to really keep intact, is the ability
in 2010. That's why I opened up my own brokerage, is because I saw a different opportunity because of Street Easy at the time, which was at that point individually owned. It wasn't bought by Zillow yet. And so I saw a change in the marketplace. People were going to streeteasy.com versus going to Corcoran.com and Element.com. So I thought, oh, okay, I just sold the Caledonia with the related companies. I now have all these opportunities to sell on my own. I drank my own Kool-Aid. I bought there. So I was having all these people come to me to sell their new listings. So I was the broker expert, and I'm like, well, this is crazy. Why am I giving up all my commission to all these firms when I'm driving my own business? I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna start my own company. I'll be a third generation entrepreneur. So I started Zollinger and Associates. And I mean, it was awesome. It was so cool because people were going to Street Easy first to the building. And then I had my own way of marketing. I had videos for every listing. And this is back in 2010, 2011, before anybody was doing that. And it was really awesome. You really couldn't do that today. If you
can do it right now. You can do it right now.
You can, but right now, I do have to say this. Side has really revolutionized the whole marketplace, because people that just want to market and not have to worry about the back of house stuff, Side has really given that opportunity for agents to just do what they need to do, and that's sell and market.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But that's what I want to keep, is the ability for people to start their own brokerages. And basically, if they want to be a one-man band, like a one broker shop with an assistant, or a couple of agents, and go out there and handle some, some deals, that they're able to do that and service agents and have access to all the same. I think that was the big fear of the industry is, number one, data. Okay. Where's all the data going to go? Because if all the data isn't in one spot, it's hard to comp properties. It's hard to, it's hard. The other part was access for buyers to all the listings. And that's something that's still an issue for me, is like when it's private, all the buyers don't have access to it during the 20 days, during the 1 week, during the whatever, that it's a private listing, quote unquote. It's not really exposed to every single buyer out there who may be in need of that property, right at that time. What's your thoughts on that part, Jason?
So listen, access to information is going to be really important, and how they get the information is really important. I'm actually okay with all this disruption, because I think we're going to come out better for it, and we had to do it because the path we were on and it's caught up to us over it's almost 2 years now, year and a half, let's call it. I think we've awoken up and we realized the way we're doing things, probably not the best. Problem is, you have people with competing interests, direct competing interests on other sides of the coin here, and everyone's butting heads. So I know everyone sees this as a bad thing. I actually see this as a great thing, because I think we're going to come out much better for it.
Well, Ricky, you talked about data, which is really important. We all do comps. That data is extremely important, but that really breaks down according to state, right? So I was in Texas for a year and a half, and they have a non-disclosure. So the MLS is the only way people get data, because when a property closes, there is nothing that's mandated by the state that sends out. Like here in New York, we have Acris. That's how you get all the closed data. In Texas, you're on your own. If it's an off-market listing, you don't know what that property sold for unless it was listed on the MLS. So if you're in
Right.
a non-disclosure state, but that's up to the individual states.
Well, I think what Jason's saying is like you got to put it in MLS. I think what you're saying, Jason, is that you want, or I'm saying like the private listing people want. It sounds like what you want, because I've talked to several people on that side. It sounds like what you want is MLS is to allow private listings into MLS. Basically, is what you want. You want to be able to publicly advertise listings without days on the market clicking. It sounds like that's the biggest issue, is the days on the market part. Is what it sounds like to me.
It governs so much of where a seller will land on price. You all know that, like when new listing comes on, agents see it, they get excited, they send to their client. 175 days later, it's not getting the same. Oh, it's new. It's like, but if there was some negative that could have been addressed before the days on market clicked, it's to the seller's advantage to know about it and to have an objection ready or respond to it. And obviously a lot of that is price, but it's not always price. Sometimes it's like people walk in and they think it smells like Bigfoot's whatever. Like, so, okay, we're going to get the place smelling nice. Like we're going to stage it. We're going to get rid of that.
Did you list Bigfoot's house one time or something?
That's a whole.
I never smelled the house that smelled like Bigfoot. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, you would be amazed sometimes the things I've walked into. Some of these.
Hey, dude, I sold condos on the beach during spring break. Okay.
Oh, so you know. Yeah. So
yeah. So okay.
It helps.
It sounds like there's pros and cons to both sides. Honestly, I mean, I was talking to somebody about this. It seems like there's that moment where the seller is like, I really want to ask this. And then after about a week or two, a lot of times it kind of sinks in. They're like, yeah, we tried it. Like you were right. We need to, get it down to where it needs to be, whatever. It's almost like a listing's been out there for a while and it kind of gets stale, and then you take it off just for the purpose of bringing it back as a brand new listing later. It just sounds like you guys are trying to do it up front. Like, let's get it out there a little bit, see what happens, and then we'll put it on there, and it's a brand new listing with some experience on the market already, where we already have collected a little bit of data to work off of.
Well, like you want to be informed, and if there's something you can do to facilitate a successful sale that you wouldn't have learned had you not otherwise been on the market or an on the market environment, but I think that's a good thing. By the way, you may learn nothing. It may go, you may learn absolutely nothing, and it may not. But I can tell you from personal experience, usually you glean something that you may not have thought of otherwise.
I think what's scary is if they sell during that period.
Okay.
I think that's the scary part for me, because if it sells during that period, then I'm like, uh-oh.
You're underpriced.
If I'm doing it just to get data, okay, that's one thing. And then I'm going to the open market and then seeing what happens. Okay, I can kind of roll with that a little bit. If I get an offer and sell it during the off market period, the private listing period, that's what's scary to me, because I don't know that is as much as I could have gotten for that property. I have no clue.
Now,
And I feel like a lot of times you might get an offer, and if it's a small group of buyers and they know it's a private listing, they just shoot this, kind of lower offer, and the seller's like, well, I don't know. That becomes kind of the scary part to me. And it seems like I've heard from a lot of people that there's lawyers standing by just kind of waiting for a year or two to go by. And then you've got, okay, well, this one sold off market. This is what things were going for at the time. There's measurable damages. Let's get all these people together and have a party.
Think about the leverage, though, that seller has. You're in the off-market environment. You get an offer in. You are completely in the driver's seat. I can take it. I can go back and say, you know what? I'm gonna see what the market says. And if the buyer's like, listen, I really want it. I'll pay you this. And if it's a good enough number for that seller, they can make. They're adults. They can make the right decision for them. For some people, it's not worth the hassle. I don't think it's the right word for it, but it's the word that's used. of being on the market. They have a ready, willing buyer who's ready to transact now. I can sell. I can move to the farm in Vermont. I can be done.
I 100% agree with your entire thesis there. I'm just telling you, it would scare me personally.
Yeah, understood.
If a client
It's not for
accepted
everyone.
an offer off market,
Mhm.
in today's litigious world. But some of this makes me think of, and you were talking about the Apple stock and the Series 7 and stuff, and you got to be licensed and all that. And what came to my mind when you were saying that was the world of wholesalers who are not licensed,
Right.
who are just basically putting things under contract, selling it without closing on it, making a profit. That's interesting, because that's an off-market property.
Yep.
And a lot of times they're off-market when they resell it. They're reselling it to an investor and it's not on MLS, it's off-market, what have you. It's interesting to think about those two worlds. And then you mix in the stocks. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's true. The stocks. So, we're licensed agents. These wholesalers don't have to be licensed. The stock brokers have to be licensed. What is the difference between all three of these things? And it makes my mind start to really tick against this. And especially in the wholesale world, those are all off-market properties, and those sellers are. And so I don't know. It makes me feel like I know that price isn't the most important thing to every seller, right? Bottom line. So I get what you're saying there. I think it would scare me a little as an agent, to like, no, my seller wants as most as he can get. He accepted this offer. I know he's probably going to close on it, quicker. I don't know. It just seems a little dicey for me.
Yeah, I mean, every situation is going to be different. The idea is, though, that you have the option, and you don't have to take the option.
Mm-hmm.
That's
no, 100% agree, man.
Yeah.
Well, bro, I love everything you're doing,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I support everything you're doing with the American Real Estate Association, you and Mauricio, and you guys have, proven to be, we've become great friends and support each other on a lot of different projects. And I just want to say, from the rest of the industry, thank you for everything that you're doing and everything you continue to do and what your vision is and how hard you're working. I mean, it's a lot of work to do what you're doing, to try to create a movement, to try to create an organization and a membership base and stuff like that. And you guys are doing an amazing job. So I wanted to say that definitely before we cut out of here.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
And you guys just took over NIRAC, correct? Or
yes,
you have a
I'm now
formal
the
agreement.
new president of NIRAC in New York City. They're our first local chapter at the American Real Estate Association. So we have a great partnership with NIRAC. We'll have other chapters around the country. And New York, the agent community of New York has been clobbered since 2019. I mean, some of the worst statutory and regulatory decisions have come down that have really hurt the industry. And we're going to lead the charge locally there to help reverse that.
Well, I've decided today to become a member.
Thank you. I love it.
All right, let's go. Let's go. So for those watching that aren't familiar with the area and what that organization is and everything, could you just give a quick little piece on exactly what that organization is and what you guys are doing with that?
The American Real Estate Association, you can read about us, americanrea.org. So we've launched, we only launched paid membership in September, so hasn't even been that long. Remember, we have members in all 50 states, thousands of members around the country. Membership for this year is only $20 for the year for a base member, $1,500 if you want to be a founding member. We're going to close that program off soon. We've been really delighted by all our founding members who have helped us really kickstart and bootstrap this thing. It's a nonprofit, so there's no shareholders. There's no return of capital to anyone. It's simply money in for the betterment of the industry, run by agents, built for agents, for the agent community. We've been working on advocacy in DC and New York. We helped beat back a crazy bill in Florida that would have been really bad for the industry. And we're building slowly. I have to remind everyone, it's an all-volunteer organization. We haven't even hired an executive director yet. You build slowly, and we never compare ourselves to NAR. We have great respect for a lot of the people over there, and we understand who we are and who we aren't. We're just trying to build something special here from the ground up, brick by brick.
And what about your association with NARAC?
So NIRAC's our first local chapter here in New York, in New York City. And so we have a great base of agents there. And we're doing an event on June 11th. We have leaders of several of the New York firms that'll
What
be there.
a roster. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That is, I mean, it is incredible. Bess Friedman, Pam Liebman,
Yep.
Sean Usher. Let's see here. Who else? Oh, Michael Leibowitz.
Yep,
So you've
from
got
Douglas
Ellen
Elliman.
Corcoran, Brown Harris Stevens, and
And we have
Core.
Deborah Kamen from the New York Times moderating. So it's,
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, no.
So how many members are do they have right now? And is it in Manhattan? Is that where it is?
Yes, it's Manhattan agent. So it's smaller because it's just for New York city agents. So we're growing within the city. The idea is there's no NAR in it's this weird quirk. There's no NAR, there are no realtors in Manhattan, Brooklyn, in most of New York City. And so instead we're under the umbrella of REBNY, which is the real estate board there, but they have commercial and residential. We're just focused on residential, and it's agents who are trying to better the business practices and the policy of New York that's coming from New York City and New York State. So we have a big portfolio and agenda there to tackle in New York. It's a very tough environment right now for our industry.
Nice, man. Nice. Well, good, man. We'll congrats, and keep fighting the good fight.
Well, with your help, with everyone here, we will. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find out more about the association?
So you can ping me Instagram at Jason Haber. You can go to our website, AmericanRIA.org. You can check out NIRAC's website as well. And or you can always just email me, Jason at AmericanRIA.org as well.
Cool.
Awesome.
Man, we appreciate you coming on, bro.
Of course. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Eric, appreciate you, bro. We'll see you next time.
All right. See you later.
See you guys.
Bye.